is what make himself become the Buddha, because he learned the path and the way to free himself from suffering. What are the Four Noble Truths? Let's begin. Who is the Buddha? Before we're gonna go into the Four Noble Truths, just want to clarify something so everyone understands. The Buddha himself is just an ordinary man who was able to find the path up to enlightenment on his own through his perseverance or effort, without anyone telling him or guiding him. He just learned this by himself, which is why it matched the description of the meaning Buddha, self-awakened or self-enlightenment. All right, so that's, in other words, he's just a human, ordinary human like us, but with a little bit of more effort and more perseverance. You can call it more perfection, that he has trained himself uncountable lifetime until the final rebirth, that he has gained himself the title of Buddha. That is something that is need to be noted, because for one to be enlightenment, it has to be by himself. No one can make him do that, right? Just like when you are hungry, you have to eat. When you eat, only then you will stop your hunger. But if you are hungry, but you tell someone to go eat for you, that person would not be hungry, but you still be hungry. So take a note on this part, all right? So that's, which brings us to what did he discover? Yes, like I mentioned in our introduction, he has found what we call known as the Four Noble Truths. What are the Four Noble Truths then? Well, it is something that mentioned in Dhammakaya Sutra. If you want to learn what it is, take a note on that. These are the first teaching, the first sermon that the Buddha himself has given to the people who are listening. They call this group of people as the first 5 disciples. In Pali they call Pancha. Pancha is mean 5. Vakkiya is an ascetic group that is come to listen to him, and they attain understanding, perfect enlightenment. So that's one of them become enlightened. That's bring forth the birth of the triple gem. We will talk about that later on in another occasion. This has been mentioned first, and as you can see on the picture, birth, aging, death, these are the suffering that we must all undergo. All the beings, not just only human. Every being, whether they are animals, human, insect, all of them must experience this, what is called suffering, from birth, aging, and die. What about pain or sickening? They are temporary, come and go. It's just like a guest. So we'll go talk about that in the detail after this one. So therefore, Dhammakaya Sutra are talking about the Four Noble Truths. It is something that make one become noble, just like the name implies. The noble that make a person find. The truth that is noble make that person become noble once he realizing them. The noble in here that I am mentioned are not the noble like you are born in the status in society, like a noble in the past in England, you know, when they call these people the noble, like that. They are not like that. The noble that using in here are noble in a person's mind. When a person has experienced or attained these truths inside himself, his mind become noble right away. It is the Four Noble Truths that make people become noble. All right, that's understand this. Let's take into detail about our Four Noble Truths. Okay, they are suffering or dukkha. Everyone who are listening here or watching this record, please take a note, because after this, we are gonna go into the name in Pali. Suffering, in Pali they call this as dukkha. Okay. The next noble truth is the origin of suffering, sometimes known as the cause of suffering. They call in Pali as samudaya. Okay. Third one, cessation of suffering, also known in Pali as nirodha. The fourth one, the path leading to cessation of suffering, known in Pali as magga. These are the four noble truths that make the people become noble, make the Buddha become, made Prince Siddhartha become Buddha. Therefore, these are the things that we take a note. But we already understand this. Why aren't we noble yet? It's a different things. Therefore, we need to take further look into detail. Even though we read, we listen to the monk teaching, or someone taught us, why don't we become enlightened when we understand or heard of the Four Noble Truths? That's because it's not in the mind. Your mind are not experienced yet. We just only listen. And after this, we could forget. But the person who attained Four Noble Truths is always in their mind. One is attached and become one with the Four Noble Truths. That is why they become noble. But as long as our mind are not into that level to attach and become with the Four Noble Truths, we are not noble yet. All right. Therefore, the Four Noble Truths that I am to explain. In Pali, rooting of the term is mean Arya Satya. Arya is a Pali term. It means noble. Satya is mean the truth. If you recall this from last session, we talked about the 10 perfections. One of them is Satya, right? Truthfulness is also the same word. Okay, so the truths that make people become noble, like I explained earlier, like making Buddha, right? Making Prince Siddhartha become Buddha. Because when one realizes, I do not use understand now, realizing or awaken that the truth is the truth that never change, even though time has gone by a very long time. Let's say if we are saying that if for one to be happy, what would be making one become happy? One would say, you get whatever you want. I would say, I am healthy. Some would say, uh, whatever they had learned or experienced at that moment, and they thought that it's happy. But if time goes, changing all the time, the next day they don't be happy anymore. They said, oh, eating, making your stomach full, you could become happy now. The truth is changing then, isn't it? But in this noble truth, it doesn't change. No matter how time is timeless, you could call it. It's always the truth, no matter how it has been. So what is the truth then? The truth is that in here, in the Four Noble Truth is one, life is suffering. What is suffering then? Well, it is, let's say, in here that when we are born, yes, let's use that term born. Don't call it rebirth. It's too deep to explain to that at the moment. Let's go. Even when we were born, everyone was happy. The baby was, coming out, he's crying. Yeah, everyone happy because they see the baby. But did the baby happy or not? No child smile when they're coming out from the womb, right? So that's therefore one thing that we can count on is that when a person has been born, they experience aging from that moment. When that moment has come, they begin to suffer from that moment on. One could also counter, hey, that's not true. Living a life is happiness. Enjoy it. That could true, but it is not for permanent. Same thing true. Suffering in here, we begin to aging from that moment. That means that the time bomb begin to tick. Whenever it explodes, that means we die. So in other words, we are moving our life towards death. It is suffering, isn't it? And no matter how long it has been, it's always the truth. That's realizing this. It's just like the gold. The gold is sold everywhere around the world, accepting that it is the most valuable object in the world. Whoever has it, he become rich and respected by many people. Same thing too. When one realizes the truth, it doesn't matter where he go. He always bring himself, his mind to be noble. Just like the candle too. When it is in the dark place, like in a dark room, when the light has been lit, it's been radiance to everywhere. It has been moved toward to. You can see whatever you are holding the candle close to. Same thing. When one realizes the Four Noble Truths, one life begin to have a meaning, to begin to have a goal, begin to be more fruitful of one doing. Thus, realizing Four Noble Truths can make one become noble in this matter. All right. Now, by realizing the Four Noble Truths, it must be done 3 times, of course. It doesn't do it by just realizing right away. And thus I have made you this table understanding. Why it has to be 3 times? Well, each time is doing its task differently. Let's take a look at the first noble truth on the first round first. When one understand or learning that there is suffering, okay, suffering of what? Well, we talk about that first after this. And then second, craving is the cause of suffering or tanha. We're going to talk about that after this as well. And cessation is, if there is suffering, there is a way. Most people, when they realizing that there is suffering, they submit to it. They don't look for the way to answer or find the answer or try to end it. That's therefore no one find that solution. So they just following what going on with their life until they die. Therefore, one would never find out what is the way to end this birth and death, to become immortal. And that's the way to end suffering. There is a path leading to the cessation of suffering. Understand this first. Is it enough? No. On the second round is one must practice. When one practice, that's the second round. Complete this first, this Four Noble Truths. And on the third round, one achieve the result. And that is how it must be realizing. It cannot be done by just the first one. So therefore, everyone, understand this fact is we can only just go on the first round, not the second one yet, because we have not even tried to practice. If one never practiced meditation, one would never find that out. And if one never find that out, the third round could not be happen because one would never achieve that, because one never practiced. Therefore, the Four Noble Truths, generally speaking, it should be done in these 3 realizing times. But of course, by realizing it has its own detail too, Therefore, I'm just going by over detail, not too much detail, just introduction. Hopefully you get this, what I mean, okay? Therefore, well, you can, Elaine, you can copy this. Well, I'll capture this and send it in the alumni course, okay? Well, make sure someone remind you too, okay? I might forget. But anyway, the table always here for you, right? Now, let's go back to our session. Time is almost over. Hopefully, Priyu doesn't go to bed late. So, putting this as an analogy, it would be like the first round, you know that you're eating medicine. You know that the medicine that help you cure your cold, relieve your fever, you know that it's good. The second round is you understand you are about to take, the pill. Second one is you are gonna take the pill into your body so it can relieve your fever, whatever you have. And the third round is you taking it and swallow it now. Same thing, just like Four Noble Truth. You know that it is good, you're practicing it, and you're achieving it. All right? So put it understand easier then. If one just only know, but one don't practice, one don't realize or even achieve the result, it is not achieving the Four Noble Truth. In fact, I'm not met, my friend, I remember this probably second or first year when I was a monk ordained. My friend, he was able to become he met a foreigner from, I think he's from England. He said that he is a professor teaching Buddhism in college. And then we show him, he showed him around in our temple until they come to the main chapel and they met what is called the Buddha statue. Then he saw the Buddha statue, yeah. Then when after that he get out from the chapel, and here is when the juicy conversation begin. He said that, why did you guys have to bother ordain? Well, so that way we can learn and practice ourselves moving toward enlightenment. He said something like this, my friend. Then the guy who was a professor from England, he said, I am enlightenment already. My friend was like, whoa, what's going on? So you see, I am a professor. I know every teachings of the Buddha by heart now. I'm teaching in university. I know everything the Buddha taught. I'm just like the Buddha now. I am enlightenment. So you don't have to even become a monk. You can live yourself family life, become enlightened like this. And that time my friend was, he don't know what to say. That's not right. You got to practice. You don't have to practice. You know everything about the Buddha taught. Why? Why you have to ordain? I'm already enlightened. My friend don't know what to say. He just like, all right, I just count this as I lost my agreement. I raised my case. Go ahead, enjoy your enlightenment, my friend. So they just go on beyond with that, So that's everyone in here. Just want to say that there are many people like this too, who thought that they are enlightenment by just study. And so, therefore, when it's like this, it is, I would call it, in the Buddhism, they call this term two ways. You could consider this as a fool. What is a fool? Go check that out in my podcast, The First Blessing. The second one, you can call this person as ignorance, or I would call he don't practice and he just, ignoring whatever it is. So therefore, not worth to mention this much, but just want to let you know that there are many people like this around. Therefore, if you have to counter such a person like this, it is pointless. Try to agree, let it be, and find our way more. Okay? Now let's get back to our session. Let's take a look at the first suffering, or dukkha. The first suffering. It is, first of all, understanding of the Buddha are different than understanding than our suffering. Okay, most ordinary people, when they are having fever, they know that they have high temperature. They take a check using thermometer. What's it called? The thing that put into your mouth, and then or that whatever they, point just like a gun point in your forehead, and they tell you temperature right away. That's most people knowing about the suffering or fever. But as that Buddha, when he understands what is fever, it just or suffering, it would be like a doctor understand. Oh, he must take antibiotic to calm down, so that way the fever will go down, something like that. So when the Buddha understand the suffering, it is like a doctor understand how to get rid of it. He see it and what should be counter and how should one get rid of it. Same thing too, understand that suffering as we are suffering in our life, like We must be born, aging and dying. Not like that. We understand that, yes, that's common people understanding, but for the Buddha, he see it right away. What is the cause that make one to become, rebirth, and how to end the rebirth, and what one should do in order to end the rebirth. This is how the Buddha see and understand. That's understand suffering. The way we see it and the way the Buddha see it is different. All right. Now, there are two kinds of suffering that need to be mentioned in here. The first one is, well, suffering. Let's go in this definition first. Sufferings in some definition in different country may be different. So that just need to be clarified first. Suffering here is mean unhappy or unhappiness, pain or unsatisfaction that one has experienced, make one feel not happy. All right. So this unsatisfactoriness or unhappiness or pain, there are two. One is conditioned suffering. Two is temporary suffering. All right. So that these are the two kinds of suffering that the Buddha had discovered, and he told us. The first one about the conditioned dukkha or conditioned suffering. Yeah, of course, it is our birth and aging and death. Like I mentioned earlier, birth, aging, and death are always in our body, in our life. It compared to that, it's just like a family member if you are the house owner. So birth, aging, and death is with us from the moment when we were born. And therefore, when you have this, understand this path, this always come when we were born. We cannot escape. It's always there. And as I mentioned, the second one is temporary dukkha, which is unpleasant, difficulty, sadness, pain, sorrow, distress, grief, misery, discomfort, or embody this worst aspect of unpleasant human experience. These are compared like a guest that come visiting our home. If you are the owner of the house, they are like guests, so they come and go. Sometimes stay longer, sometimes stay short, depend. But they come and go. They are not like aging, death, and birth, right? So these are the two kinds of suffering one must experience throughout his life. For birth, it is suffering by the beginning when we inside our womb. Birth, I mean here, not like when you're coming out, just coming out when you begin to age. But the main thing that I didn't mention earlier is that the moment when life begins to start inside a womb, that is when we begin to age. That's that moment, all right? So suffering during the birth, the baby when it was coming out from its mother's womb is crying because of the pain. It's been squishing. No baby coming out happily and laughing. So that's one of the, I would say, confirmation that birth has started since aging, since we were born. The suffering has begin to start when we were born, right? And cause of this leading to further is that we begin to attach to our family member like father and mother. We suffering pain, death, and whatever is come. These compared to this, like we are building the house. That's therefore everyone, birth is the beginning of the suffering. And yes, when we have our life begin to go to the cycle of rebirth or cycle of existence, birth is the beginning that will attract aging and death to come after. Therefore, it is something that we need to be put this into notice. But furthermore, while we were inside our mother's womb, it doesn't mean that we are always safe. We could also have abortion too, right? We never know when our mother not wanting us anymore, or something gonna happen to her body. So we could die at any moment before we realize or see the whole world. That's therefore birth is risky as well. It's never mean that we were safe until we were born. No, we have a risk, a chance of that. We never know what the karma that we have. So therefore, it is something that is suffering to be mentioned. What about aging then? Aging since birth, having less strength, liable to disease is like a broken house, like you mentioned in here. Well, word by word first. After we were born, the time begin to ticking on us. In other words, the time bomb begin to start. And as we grow older and older, we could thought that when we become young, we get a lot of strength. That isn't true. Imagine when we were just a young child, we like playing around, run without tirelessly, right? But when we begin to get aging, become teenagers, we don't want to run or exercise that much anymore. And as we get older, our strength begin to lose. And when we begin to lose, our body begin to weaken. That's liable to disease. So that's why when we build a house, our house gets aging. So when it's become broken, aging is like that condition. So this is the second kind of, the second definition of birth or suffering and birth. And last is death. Death is taking away everything what one ever have or hold dear. The moment when we were born alone, right? But as we grow and experience and become part of the society, we begin to know people, love our family, find someone that we love. We begin to attach to whatever we experience in the society as we living our life. Therefore, when we die, it just disappear within that moment, just like a house that is on fire. All right. But some people may misunderstood that when a person die, a family member begin to grieve or have to experience a lot of whatever responsibility that person had left behind when he died suddenly or something like that. That is not kind of suffering we are mentioned here. We are mentioned here a person experience whatever he has honed there, he has to be parting from that. And that is suffering. The most and the worst case suffering one ever experience is in our life is parting from everything that we hold dear. And that is why we don't want to die. We want to hold on to our life dearly, but when we die, suffering greatly because of death. But we don't begin to forget when we begin to reborn again. When we born again, we forget about whatever experience we have done in the previous life. And that is starting afresh a thing again. And if we have been like this, start and restart over and over, uncountable, unable to remember at all. And it is the suffering of what noble truth has been mentioned. Right now, we're coming to the second one, the origin of suffering. Well, need to go a little bit quicker. It's too long. Samudaya. Okay, samudaya in here is the cause of suffering. The cause or the origin of suffering that the Buddha mentioned is tanha or tanha. How you gonna pronounce them? They are craving, desire, or attachment. If one has this, one will surely guarantee 100% suffer. So that's samudaya that mentioned in here. The cause of suffering is tanha. As long as we have this in our mind, we will never be free from suffering. Okay, and thus it is the cause that making us suffer. Therefore, it making us become rebirth. Because we are attached to whatever we are attached. For example, we are having attachment to our family member. So if one die, one gonna be suffer from parting. When one suffer from parting, if his mind or her mind is not clear, wherever it is go, it's gonna be leading to that. So when it is that my master teaching in our temple is that when a person is about to die, make sure keep his mind free from the worry or attachment. So when he free, when he die, he can go to where his mind leading him to, not attached to the people around him. Otherwise, he will not be free and he will be feeling more remorse because, let's say, for example, the case of the billionaire, when he about to die, a lot of people come around him. Why? Did you write the will? What about my heritage? What about my money? They were, debating over this wealth that he has left behind. So when he passed away, no one They not after the funeral, they're gonna just, kind of like talking about the heritage and the money and everything. But if his mind attached to the money, of course, he gonna be there. Why do you spend my money so much and something on and on? But when the 7 days is over, he's not gonna be go to the happy place. He's gonna go somewhere his mind is gonna lead him to. So that's better keep his mind happy. This is something that the Thai Buddhists normally do. Right? So this is the concept that's quite new at its time too. Why? People at the time, especially in the time of the Lord Buddha, people believe that when one become a Brahma being, do you recall a Brahma being? Yes, they are the being that is living above the sensual realm or sensual uh, sphere. These beings are the goal of the Hindu religion, or this being is the origin of human, like you learn from the time and scale or the birth, rise and fall of the universe. This Brahma being is the goal. They are considered as the highest goal. When one die, one should become one of or become part or a Brahma being. Then one will be happiness. But when the Buddha went to teach his first 5 disciples this concept that there is suffering, there is a cause of suffering. One can feel suffering and find everlasting happiness. By this, follow the path of the eightfold path of the Makka. Whoa, this is a new concept to them. They begin to pay attention. From the story of the Buddha biography here, these 5 disciples left him because they thought that he not going to be able to find the path to enlightenment because he started himself eating again. At the time, they thought that practice of self-mortification is the only way for one to achieve enlightenment. But when Prince Siddhartha stopped torture himself or practice self-mortification, he began to eat and live normal life. They left him because they believe such a thing. But then when he come and tell them that I have become a Buddha, I found this way, follow this path and you will feel free just like me. At first they don't believe, but when they found this concept that he introduced to them is new and they follow and they begin to enlighten just like him. Thus, the religion begin to start because this is the new concept, all right? That make people able to achieve just like he did. Now, Tanha or the cause of suffering, there are 3 characteristics that need to be mentioned here. They are rebirth, because Tanha is causing one to be rebirth and having more attachment and desire as they are living and grow on with their life. And once they enjoy whatever they have experienced, they have more attached. And that's more feeling arise. When more feeling arise, whether they are happy, remorse, or suffering, and whatever it is, it's gonna keep going to the loop. But in order to free one from that tanha, one must get rid of it. All right. So compared to this, understand easier is just like a mango. I'm sure you have mango in there. Right now in Thailand is the mango season and durian season. I want to put durian, but you probably don't gonna see analogy easier. So let's just put with the mango first. If you want, I'm not sure if you ever seen a mango, but the mango is that when it was at its tree, it has some sap. It's very sticky. As long as there is a sap inside its seed, when you put the seed and plant it, it's going to grow into the mango tree. Same thing as tanha is like a sap that is regenerate and run inside the mango seed. So whenever you plant it, it will grow. But if the seed is dry, when you're planting it, it won't grow because it doesn't have any sap anymore. Same thing. If we don't have tanha or the sap in the mango, then it won't grow. Okay, now, since there are three characters, there are also three kinds of tanha. Okay, one, kama tanha, which is means sensual pleasure or craving. Bhava tanha, which is craving for being. Vibhava tanha, or craving for non-existent. Okay, this needs to be little bit giving explanation. Sensual pleasure is like, 5 cents, pleasure to 5 cents, whether you see what you like, you want to see this person again, or you want to hear that song again, or you want to taste that juicy hamburger or steak burger again, or, if you want to touch or hold something or someone that you love again. These are sensual pleasure craving. This is tanha or desire for that. The second, I think you understand this one, but the second one, bhava tanha, craving for being. It's kind of like when you were young, you want to be this person, you want to be that, you want to be a president of the United States, you want to be like a successful astronomer, you want to be a billionaire. It's craving for being like that. But the one that makes people confusing is craving for non-existence, vibhava tanha. It's kind of like, it's not like this. It's not like this first, okay? Let's say you want to be the president of United States or president of Thailand, whatever you want to call. When the time of peace, it's very easy to govern the government, run the country. But when there's a terrorist, there is a thing, the trouble coming, you don't want this trouble, you want to get out. It is something that is not vibhava tanha, okay? It is this kind of like when you are there and you want to get out. This is not vibhava tanha. Vibhava tanha is this. For example, you don't want to get married, but then your friend forced you to marry. They're suffering because of that. You don't want to be this, but because of the circumstance forcing you to. This is vibhava tanha. Understand what I mean, everyone? If you do, leave me some comment too, okay? Craving for being is you want something, but you don't get it. Craving for non-existent or vibhava tanha is you don't want something, but you're gonna have to get it. That's vibhava tanha, or craving for non-existent. It is suffering too. This is three kind of tanha that we must go in our life. Like that, all right? Now, next to the third noble truth, cessation of suffering, also known as nirodha. This is a complete cessation of tanha. In other words, if there is the sun, there would be, let's put it again. If there is sunrise, there will be sundown, sunset, yes. If there is sunrise, there will be sunset. If there is suffering, there will be the end of suffering or cessation of suffering. Therefore, there is a way, and that is nirvana, as you already know in your language. But in Pali, they call this as nibbana. You get that, Helen? Hopefully you're there though. Okay. Nirvana is the same as nibbana, just different wording. Okay. But in cessation of suffering, there are three things that need to be explained. Hopefully I make you understand though, because I myself don't have much time to make the slide. But either way, let's go with this first. Nirvana. What is it? And is nirvana emptiness or nothingness? And cessation of suffering, what is that like? Well, let's take a look. Nirvana, according to the scripture, explaining is, let's go with this first, is that before we have been born as human being, first time ever, everyone, the nature of our mind is very pure, okay, very pure, like a crystal ball in the picture. But as we grow up, as we've been experiencing birth many times, sadness, suffering, we have been go through, our mind begin to impure, caught with a lot of tanha or desire in our mind. That is not pure, it's not clean, it's not bright, it's not clear anymore. Therefore, this is the first nirvana. That's when one achieve nirvana, the mind become pure. Pure just like nothing, like if there is a tree has many elements like earth, water, fire, wind inside, like our body too. But as it begin to make together become a tree, it's become impure. Same thing for our mind too. If our mind doesn't have any kind of those tanha, it become pure, and that will reaching the state of nirvana. That's the first explanation. The second one is it is something that is beyond of this world and universe. Well, imagine here, if you never been to Thailand before, everyone, and if your friend said Thailand is very hot, Thailand people is very sabai, the good food. Can you imagine what kind of good food? Can you imagine what kind of Thai people very sabai? Can you imagine how hot it would be? Hot in the United States, it is like very dry hot. But in Thailand, it's very humid. Can you imagine how hot it would be like that? Same thing, explain nirvana to the people who never been there or see it before. And during the time the Buddha, is quite too difficult to explain too. But there is something that they usually say that nirvana is void, empty, nothing. We will talk about that after this. Okay. Another explanation of nirvana is that's all right. You got to leave, Kathleen. Don't worry. It still continue after this, so you can watch the video after this. Okay. Now, the explanation is pure. Okay. Pure is that it's completely without anything mixing in it. So that's for one to enter nirvana or become one with nirvana, their mind must be pure, and that's would leading them to nirvana. And it's beyond outside of this world, this universe too. Therefore, everyone, this is the cessation of nirvana that is explaining in here. Oh yeah. Now, is nirvana emptiness or nothingness? Does it mention in here? In the translation, it means here. One of the Buddha words is said that Nibbana Nibbanang Paramang Sukhang, which means Nibbana is the greatest bliss. If Nibbana is the greatest bliss, it means it's not happy, it's not empty, it's nothingness. As translation, when it's said in here, the word is mean void or emptiness or nothingness is, you know, when it's used the term as nothingness, it could not go with this third, with the explanation of the Buddha explaining that Nibbanang Paramang Sukhang, which is greatest bliss. If it is happiness and it's the best happy, there must be some feeling in there. That's one to attain. So it's not thingness. There must be something in there, right? So it's not thing and it's not empty. Therefore, nirvana is not empty and it is not thingness. Not nothingness. It is something in there. But to talk or explaining that is beyond my comprehension at the moment too, because first of all, everyone, I'm not experiencing nirvana yet. Two, this must go into practice, understand and realize simply by learning from what I just said or from what you just reading. We're not making you completely comprehend on this. One must practice meditation, but at least one thing you learn through your experience of your practice of meditation is that when you find yourself relaxation, you feel light, you feel empty, feel like you could float, your body disappear. That's the feeling of emptiness. But it's just more than 100 or 1 million times more than just that when one experience of become pure or attaining nirvana. Hopefully this make you understand this part. Now, for the cessation of suffering, the last one, if you compare with the concept that teaching with many religion, for one suffer because of the supreme being make a wish, wishing so for one to test, undergo the test so they can prove himself worth the trust and go living near him. When you go living near that supreme being, you can become happiness lasting forever. That's the concept of many religion has been given. But for the Buddhism, if one wish to be enter nirvana, you must go by practice of the Magga or eightfold path, the path that leading you toward nirvana. Therefore, do it yourself. The Buddha showed this is how you do. If you do it, you can be like me. If you don't do it, you're just gonna be like who you are now. Therefore, cessation of suffering in here is that you must do it yourself, right? Now to the last part, the path leading to the cessation of suffering or Magga. When he understands this part, I will talk about that later on sometime. I think it could be in podcast or also on our full moon. Magga or the middle way. Okay, Majjhima Patipatha or the middle path. Also in simple term as the middle way. This also reference or is the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, this is the path. If you are living your life as a family or a householder, this is called. This is not the path that the monk or ascetic or the priest should living his life on. Or if you practice self-notification, this is not the path too. Living in the middle way is that you don't live like a family man or a householder, and you don't torture yourself like at the different religions or practice in the India at that time. They believe that. The people believe that, okay, at that time, and some still do now. If one to find ever happiness in one life, one must be success, become very rich, will become very powerful in influence. This is a life that one can become happy. That is the life of a family man. This is, and many people still believe that, and that's why they want to be rich, right? Or in the time of the Buddha, they believe that if one to experience everlasting happiness or nirvana, just like if you want to get orange juice, you want to drink orange juice, you must squeeze the orange to get the juice coming out. Same thing for if you want to find everlasting happiness, is to come out from your body. You must torture your body until it's coming out. That is not the path that the Buddha meant. He meant that for one to achieve end of suffering, go with the middle path. You eat enough to survive, but you don't eat too much to make yourself indulge to, sensual pleasure. Something like that, okay? So what are the eightfold path? I will not go into detail because next week we're going to talk about this, the eightfold path, everyone. So that's the eightfold path. They are right view. What are the right view? There will be the week after that too. Right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort. Ooh, let me spell that. Should be big E. Right mindfulness and right concentration. According to my master, all of these eightfold paths, it must go together at once. It must go together. In some of the texts of teaching in different teachers, they say that it go and do one separately. But in my master, when he practicing, experience this, he said it must go together, not separately. Right view is the beginning. When one have a right reference view in their mind, they begin to have a right thinking. Let's say, for example, if you listen to my podcast, you will see that being associating with the fool, it will cause one to have a wrong view. When we have a wrong view, it will have a wrong thought, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentration, or everything go wrong. But if one associating with the wise, for example, doing good deed will result good deeds. The way they thinking would be good, speak good and do good, all flow. But when doing one round, is it enough? No. It must go into spiral, further, until finally achieve its goal, nirvana. And that is how it goes. But if one practice one round, what's going to be the difference? The difference is that one understand better, more careful, more truly in thinking, more carefully in speech, in action. Go repeating many times, countless times until one reach nirvana. And that is how practice of the Eightfold Path would do. But what are they in detail? Next week, everyone. Hopefully you guys come too. And this is the only way, and one must practice in order to achieve nirvana. And only taught in Buddhism. Okay. Therefore, everyone, what is gonna be and how it's gonna be starting? Well, I would go leaving that is for our next session. I think it is time. Sorry, Priya, you're gonna have to go to bed late. Me too, though. So everyone, thank you everyone very much for joining us our session today. I hope you enjoy our session. Your hand, or okay, here's one. Nirvana is truth. Truth is the path to nirvana. Of course not. It's already and no, nirvana is, I would call, just explaining earlier. Okay, it's the way to end the suffering. It is part of the Four Noble Truths, but it is not the truth, but it is something that would never change. The truth, I'm not sure what is mentioned in here, but the truth that I am mentioning here is the Four Noble Truths. Okay, yes, it is part of the Four Noble Truths, and it is the truth that is not changed. It is always all the time. It's timeless. It never changed. Hopefully this helps. All right. Okay. Well, if there's no question, then I think it's getting late. We will continue. If you can send the question later on, and we can discuss in our next session. But luckily, though, this coming Wednesday on our mind journey, we have a guest teaching monk coming, and he expert on these Four Noble Truths. He is he just graduated doctor degree as well. He learned in Buddhism. Maybe we can discuss with him on this matter when we join our Zoom on my journey this coming Wednesday. So hopefully stay tuned for next session. All right, everyone.